America's doomsday weapon is joining the campaign. After a night of fire, the United States made it clear to Israel, we are not stopping. Iran has begun line mines in the Strait of Hormuz, and in the Revolutionary Guards, they are threatening the United States. We have a unique weapon that we have not yet used. A joint operation by Iran and Hezbollah against Israel took place, and we had a night of hundreds of missiles over the northern communities of Israel. Iran threatens, we will strike harder than we have until now. The commander of the American forces responded, it's not like they have all the much left to attack with, and added, we are ready. Trump announced yesterday, we destroyed everything that they had, and I'm thinking about taking control of the Strait of Hormuz. Israel is in another crazy sequence of eliminations in Tehran with guided drones that lock onto the target and self-destruct on impact. Footage shows hundreds of suicide drones attacking the regime's cruel besieged forces. Launches from Iran activated sirens from the north to the south of Israel. And then oil tankers were attacked last night inside Iraq's territorial waters. There are reports of Israeli operations in the style of the pager operation in Lebanon. We still cannot verify or say anything, but the reports show that Hezbollah people in Lebanon are terminated mysteriously one after the other. The FBI warned that Iran could launch drones towards California in the United States of America. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report, where we bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel and everything that is hot in the Middle East. Although the traditional media are searching, getting caught up, and publishing full opinion pieces as if they were news reports, and for some reason inflating every small detail that would make Israel and the United States look like they are losing this war, the achievements on the ground by Israel and by the United States of America against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran cannot be taken away. The situation against Iran points to a crushing success for all of us. You don't believe it? This report just came in. In Tehran, they're accusing the Mossad of an exercise straight out of a science fiction movie, an attack by AI-guided drones, which I think I will start calling a super drone swarm made in Israel that was documented in Tehran while dozens of besieged personnel were terminated within minutes. The besieged mechanisms deployed roadblocks on major streets to prevent civilian movement, and in a news agency that is identified with the regime, it was written that Israeli drones attacked roadblocks. The goal? To create a sense of persecution. In Iran, they claim that this is joint work by the Mossad and the monarchist elements. We will soon bring you all the details about this crazy operation. And today is day 13 of the war against Iran. This is 13 days of fighting. And today we will bring you a summary of the night's news. The IDF forces responded to the escalation of Hezbollah's attack on the Israeli border in the north. And the Israeli Air Force attacked dozens of Hezbollah launchers and headquarters in the Dahya neighborhood in Beirut, Lebanon. On the other side, the enemy launched missiles towards many areas in Israel from the north all the way to the south to the Eilat city. This is a combined attack by Iran and Hezbollah against Israel. CENTCOM threatened Tehran, and Trump declared that the job must be finished against the Iranian regime. Up to this moment, Iran has launched at Israel only half the number of missiles that it fired in Operation Am Kelavi. The defense establishment identified a drop in the motivation amongst many commanders in the ranks of the IRGC and the lack of coordination in front of operational ranks. The number of Air Force strikes has jumped significantly compared to the previous operation. And after the extensive barrages towards the northern Israel communities last night, Iran's Revolutionary Guards announced that they had carried out a joint operation with Hezbollah against Israel. Israel announced that We succeeded in intercepting most of the attack. There were no fatalities, and the United States military is shifting the center of gravity from the fighting to the soft underbelly of the Iranians, which is oil. The United States military and Central Command, CENTCOM, published new footage with a threatening message to the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime is losing air capabilities every single day. The statement said that the United States forces are not only defending against Iranian threats, we are dismantling them systematically, said the United States military's Central Command. The fighting is expanding. Iran has begun laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Dozens of mines have been laid in recent days alone by the regime in the strait, which serves as a central route for oil and goods from the Gulf to the rest of the world. And Trump threatened, if they do not remove them immediately, the military consequences will be unprecedented. And Iran threatens in return, we will strike harder than we have until now. Iran is not staying quiet. And after the warning by the United States, the military, it is issuing another threat. We will carry out a heavier action than we have done so far. And in response, Trump said, we are not stopping until the mission is completed. We do not want to come back every 2 years. The American president also said that the United States must finish this because the day will come when the Trump administration will not be president, and maybe a weak and pathetic president will come in my place, according to the US president. He also added, it will happen very quickly. The president also claimed that the Iranians are strong and very prepared, and added, they would have tried to take over the entire Middle East and would have destroyed Israel. During a rally in Kentucky, Trump declared that Iran had lost its military capabilities and that the United States is riding freely in its skies above Iran. He also threatened a crushing response if the oil exports are blocked. We destroyed everything that they had. I'm thinking about taking control of the Strait of Hormuz. In an interview he gave last night, Trump said the Iranians are more or less at the finish line. They are simply ruined. In a conversation with reporters during the night, President Trump of the United States praised the United States military and said that oil reserves will be released and that the Strait of Hormuz looks like it's in a great shape. In the IDF, they revealed Iran planned hundreds of missiles launches every single day, and then the Air Force changed this equation together. In the Air Force, they noted that they succeeded in hitting Iran's command and control array, and because of that, they were unable to meet their missile launch objectives towards Israel, nor maintain consistency in them. There are areas in Iran that have stopped functioning and stopped launching. America's doomsday weapon is joining the campaign. The B-52 aircraft, first introduced more than 70 years ago, continues to be one of America's deadliest weapons. The B-52 aircraft was deployed in Europe this week in preparation for possible use in strikes on Iran. Hezbollah announced a new operation and fired dozens of rockets that activated sirens from Kiryat Shmona all the way to Haifa. It wants to divert our attention away from Iran and thinks that if it pulls us inward, we will ease off the gas. That will not happen. And therefore, we are heading for severe escalation, said an Israeli senior official. According to him, the decisive campaign in Lebanon will shape the future of both countries. The war has temporarily effects on the economy, and right now, the oil crisis is deepening. Trump releases reserves, and also Oman makes a dramatic move. Trump ordered the release of 172 million barrels of oil from the strategic reserves following the price surge against the background of the Iranian threat in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, Oman evacuated tankers from a central port out of fear of escalation. Iraq completely shut down the activity of its oil terminals after the Iranian attack in its waters, in which 2 oil tankers were hit. In addition, Iran's new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, is suffering from a broken foot and cuts to his face. Ahead of the discussion at the United Nations, Israel is demanding that the Revolutionary Guards be defined as a terrorist organization. Russia did not use its veto power in the United Nations Security Council, and following that, the United Nations approved the resolution with harsh language against Iran. Bahrain's proposal condemning Iran's attacks against the Gulf states was accepted by a majority of 13 votes, while Russia and China as well chose not to use their veto power, leaving the Iranians without support. In the Federal Bureau of Investigation, they feel that Tehran is planning a drone attack from civilian vessels at sea towards targets in California, the United States of America. Despite the lack of concrete information about the timing of the attack, the alert levels in Los Angeles has been raised to its highest point ahead of the Oscars ceremony that will take place on Sunday. The tension in the Middle East is rising minute by minute. So let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, with me is Mati Shoshani, and we are the boots on the ground that bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel. And this is day 13 of the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. In just a second before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth, share our content with as many people as possible. Click the subscribe button of the TBN Israel YouTube channel to receive daily updates of this war. And the most important thing that you can do is pray for the situation. And if you want to see the war from our eyes behind the scenes, look for Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani on social media platforms, where we give you a look at how it is to live in Israel right now. Drones attacked besieged roadblocks in the heart of Tehran last night, and within minutes, dozens of regime security personnel were terminated in that location after besieged units had deployed in the main streets to block movement and prevent an uprising. At the same time, according to reports from Iran, those same roadblocks were attacked both from within the city and from the air, while a broad presence of drones could already be felt in the skies. The question now is not only how this operation was carried out, but why it came exactly now and what it says about the new phase that opened on day 13 of the Lions Roar War, or Epic Fury. This was the most vivid event of this night, and it is also the one that tells the broader story. The Iranian regime tried to seal off Tehran from within. Besieged personnel deployed roadblocks on major streets, restricted civilian movements, and tried to restore control by force. Then came an attack that looked almost like a new stage in the campaign. In Iran, they admitted that roadblocks have been attacked, and in their statements, it was claimed that this was a joint work by the Israeli Mossad and the monarchist elements. And in their language, this was no longer just an attack, but an attempt to infiltrate terrorists and sabotage the state. But what emerges from the picture of the events is something else. No longer only strikes on the missile facilities, the bases, and the headquarters, but a direct move against the regime's internal suppression mechanism. At first, there was talk about a 10 amount of people that were dead at 4 roadblocks. Later, testimonies began to come up in speaking of dozens of besieged personnel that were eliminated within minutes. In some reports, it was claimed that the initial death toll had already passed 100 and that some of the bodies could not be identified because of burns and severe injuries. That gap needs to stay on the table. The exact number is still not settled, but in the bottom line, even according to the most limited version, this was a painful, focused, and highly symbolic blow against those who are supposed to control the Iranian street. And here the method of oppression comes in. In Tehran, they blamed Israeli drones. In other reports, a very broad drone presence over the skies of the capital of Iran was described, creating a sense of urban control straight from the air. So it is not by chance that the line repeated again and again is that this looks like a new version of previous deep operations, only this time in the heart of Tehran against the suppression roadblocks themselves. It is not currently possible to verify all the technical details, and certainly not to determine definitely whether this was a swarm of artificial intelligence-guided drones, as they accuse in Iran, but it is possible to say that it is known the roadblocks were attacked, besieged operatives were terminated, and the Iranian public received a very sharp message that the people who are supposed to frighten them no longer feel secure themselves. The timing is also important. Before the attack, Razeh Pahlavi called on his supporters to stay home, continue striking, not go to work, and show solidarity from their homes. After that came the reports about the drones. Immediately afterwards, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel also again addressed the Iranians and said that in the coming days, conditions would be created for them to take their fate into their own hands. In other words, this operation did not stand alone. It sat within a broader move of military pressure, psychological pressure, and an attempt to undermine the sense of immunity of Iran's internal apparatus. Behind the scenes, this connects directly to what the IDF says about the overall picture of the campaign. In the Air Force, they say that the strike on Iran's command and control array changed the equation. According to them, the Iranians planned hundreds of missile launchers every single day, together with swarms of drones, but in practice, they are not managing to do it. In the previous operation, they fired 550 missiles. Now, after 12 days of fighting, they have reached only about 250. They are unable to launch more than a few individual missiles in each launch, and no more than about 20 in a day. The meaning is not only a shortage of munitions or platforms, but damage to the ability to coordinate, decide, pass along orders, and execute. In the IDF, they describe a reality in which there are areas in Iran that have already stopped functioning and launching. Some of the fire, they say, is being carried out on the basis of local motivation and not through a structured system. This also connects well with what was seen on the streets of Tehran. If the regime's internal apparatus is being attacked from within and from the air, and if the commanders are unable to coordinate between the operational echelon and the decision-making echelon, then we are not only seeing an erosion of firepower, we are seeing the dismantling of a system. The scope of the Israeli activity supports this. So far, the Air Force has carried out about 4,000 sorties in Iran and dropped more than 10,000 munitions. The area has been split in two. One brigadier general is managing the aerial campaign over Iran. Another brigadier general is managing the area in Lebanon. Aircraft, drones, helicopters, intelligence, and separate prioritization have been assigned to each arena. This is not only an organizational question. This is Israel's ability to sustain two airways at the same time without the operational focus in one swallowing up the other. And indeed, this night also opened as a double one. Before the strikes in Tehran, and also after it, Israel returned and struck in Lebanon. The Air Force attacked 10 buildings in the Dahya neighborhood in Beirut within half an hour. These were not just buildings, but terror headquarters, including intelligence headquarters, a headquarters of the Radwan unit, and other operational headquarters. At the same time, more than 20 targets were attacked in real time in an immediate closing of the circle, and dozens of launches and Hezbollah terrorists who had planned to launch rockets towards Israel were destroyed. According to reports from Lebanon, there were also fatalities in strikes in the Beirut coastal area, and later in the night, a more severe strike was also reported on the Ramlet El Baida coast, with fatalities and wounded in tens of displaced people. On the other side, Hezbollah tried to widen the fire. It launched a new operation, launched dozens of rockets, and kept entire areas in the northern parts of Israel closed to protected spaces for more than 3 hours, meaning that the families had to stay in the bomb shelters for all this time. In Israel, we assessed that yesterday it destroyed about 200 rockets and drones, and about 80 of them did not cross into the Israeli territory at all. That is an important figure. On the one hand, This is a high volume of fire. And on the other hand, it is also a measure of erosion incapability, execution problems, or launches that were stopped midway. But this night did not remain only against Hezbollah. The Revolutionary Guards themselves announced that they had carried out a joint operation with the Hezbollah terrorist organization against Israel. According to their statement, they combined Qadr, Imad, Khibar Shekhan, and Fatah missiles alongside Hezbollah attack drones and missiles against more than 50 targets all across Israel. In practice, sirens were activated from the north to the south. There was fire towards the north, towards the center, towards Jerusalem, Samaria, also Shomron and the Shfela and the Arava in the south, and also the southernmost city in Israel, Elat. In Hanunit, in the Hefer Valley, heavy damage was caused to a building. Interception fragments fell in Haifa, Zichron Yaakov, and other locations. In Elat, a missile exploded in an open area. In some places, homes were hit, but there are no reports of fatalities in these night events. In a moment, we will also touch on what the Americans did at sea and in the air. But first, keep spreading the truth. Share, follow us, hit the subscribe button, because while our soldiers battle on the front lines, Israel is experiencing another struggle at home, here. Our small businesses and farms, which are the backbone of the Jewish nation, are under immense pressure to keep operating while families stay close to bomb shelters, and Israel is calling up more and more IDF reserve troops to fight our enemies. I want to call on you to bless Israel in a very practical way. Blessed by Israel gives you the opportunity to act immediately to provide the urgent lifeline that these families need to sustain their livelihoods by purchasing high-quality Israeli products. This incredible olive oil that you're seeing in the screen is from an organic farm in the Jordan Valley, a frontier oasis where the Atidia family is gardening and reclaiming what was once barren land. At Blessed by Israel, you'll get much more than just a great olive oil, honey, and coffee, because your purchases strengthen the brave men and women and sustaining our nation through these difficult times by blessing the small businesses of Israel. So go now to blessedbyisrael.com/stand. Again, that's blessedbyisrael.com/stand. Now you can show your unwavering support and let Israel know that we are not alone, because we have you in our backs. And now let's return to the picture on the ground. But I just want to say this again. It's blessedbyisrael.com/stand. And now let's return to the picture of what's happening on the ground. If the operational night showed the lines of fire, the morning already showed the direction of the next escalation. The United States is shifting the center of gravity to Iran's soft underbelly, oil, the sea, and the freedom of navigation. In the Strait of Hormuz, according to the reports, Iran has begun laying dozens of mines in recent days. This is no longer only a blockade in the declarations. This is real infrastructure for disrupting the world's main energy routes. In response, Trump threatened that if the mines are not removed immediately, the military consequences will be unprecedented. Later, the Americans announced that they had destroyed 10 Iranian vessels with mine-laying capabilities. U.S. Central Command published additional footage and emphasized that the Iranian regime is losing air capabilities day by day, and that United States forces are not only defending against the threats, but dismantling them systematically. Here too, it is important to understand the sequence of events. First came the Iranian threats against the ports. Then came the American warning to port workers in Iran to stay away from focal points where there is military activity. After that came Tehran's response. If they threaten our ports, all peers and economic ports in the region will be legitimate targets, and Iran will carry out a heavier action than it has done so far. Hovering over that threat was also the unusual statement by the deputy commander of the Revolutionary Guards that Iran has a unique weapon it has not yet used, including missiles that launched from underneath the water. This is still a declaration, but it fits well into the arena in which Iran is trying to create deterrence through the sea, through oil, and through a sense of ongoing danger. And meanwhile, during the night, Iran already translated parts of that threat into action. A United States-owned oil tanker was hit near Iraq. 2 tankers were hit inside Iraq's territorial waters. 1 person was killed. 38 were rescued, and large fires broke out on the water. In Iraq, they defined this as a violation of the sovereignty and decided to completely shut down the activity of their oil terminals, even if the commercial ports remained active. Oman took another step and evacuated vessels from the Mina El Fahal terminal. At the port of Salalah, drone strikes on fuel tanks were also reported. In Bahrain, a strike was reported last night on fuel tanks at the Bapco Oil Company facility, with a large fire at the site. In Kuwait, it was updated that the international airport was attacked by several drones without casualties, and in Dubai, a hotel fire was also reported following a drone strike. The results were immediate. Oil prices jumped again. Brent passed $100 per barrel for 1 oil barrel, and WTI also jumped sharply. Trump tried to hold this back and ordered the release of 172 million barrels of oil from the strategic reserves of the United States of America in a move that is supposed to continue for about 120 days. At the same time, there was also talk of a broader coordinated release of 400 million barrels from the reserves of other countries. But Iran struck exactly at the most sensitive point, not in the war over the produced oil alone, but in the sense of the security of the maritime trade. The moment tankers are burning inside the territorial waters of other countries, it is no longer only a question of price, it is a question of route, insurance, military escort, and trust. Above this arena now stands the possible entry of the American doomsday weapon. 3 B-52 bombers landed this week in Hereford in England. These bombers, included that were introduced back in 1952, are still considered one of the deadliest weapons in the American arsenal. It is capable of carrying more than 30 tons of bombs, including heavy munitions and bunker-busting bombs as well, and launching them to a distance of about 2,500 kilometers. This is not only a means of attack, it is also a declaration. And when senior American officials say that the skies over Iran are so open for them that they can also operate non-stealth aircrafts, it is necessary to understand what this means. That the layers of air defense have eroded, the radars have been hit, and American air freedom is expanding. The same line was also heard from the American political arena. Trump said again and again last night that the United States is not stopping until the mission is completed because it does not want to return to war with Iran every 2 years. He described Iran as a ruined country, claimed that its navy has been destroyed, that its air force had disappeared, that it had no radars, and that the United States and Israel are leaving behind targets that they can erase within an hour. And at the same time, he also voiced another line. The Iranian regime is strong and prepared, and if action had not been taken against it, it would have tried to take over the entire Middle East and destroy Israel. Between those two statements runs Washington's political line right now. On the one hand, declarations of victory. On the other hand, a refusal to stop. The message also reached Israel. We are not stopping. That is the line of the Americans that are currently conveying. And that is also the reason that Trump is talking about finishing the job, about the possibility of taking control of the Strait of Hormuz, and about the fact that one day, perhaps, a weak and pathetic president will come after him, and therefore, what he started must be completed now. He also said that the United States has its eyes on all of Iran's sleeper cells. In that context, there was also reports added last night about an FBI warning over a possibility that Iran may launch drones from vessels towards targets in California. There is no concrete information on timing or targets, but the alert level in Los Angeles has already risen to its highest point ahead of the Oscars ceremony. In other words, from Washington's perspective, the war is no longer remaining only in the Middle East. It is also measured by the question of Iran's abilities to export revenge beyond the ocean. From here, we gradually move to the diplomatic part. But there too, everything is still connected to the ground. In Tehran, they threaten to strike harder than they have done until now. They demand that any future ceasefire agreement include a commitment that Israel and the United States will not return and strike again. That is a demand that teaches a great deal about their condition. On the one hand, a threat. On the other hand, an attempt to obtain guarantees for survival. And at the same time, in the United States, there are also voices saying something completely different, that despite the severe blows, the regime itself is still not in an immediate danger of collapse. That too has to be kept inside the picture, so as not to write the war as tough as it already has been decided while it is still being fought. And yet, diplomatically, Iran looks more isolated today than in previous days. Israel is not explicitly demanding that the Revolutionary Guards be defined as a terrorist organization. That's what Israel is doing in the UN. And Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar sent a sharp letter to the members of the Security Council, demanded a harsh condemnation of Tehran, and again warned of the nuclear program, the ballistic missiles, and the internal repression of the Iranian people. Added to this was also the decision in the Security Council. Bahrain's proposal, which condemned Iran's attacks against the Gulf states, was accepted by a majority of 13 votes. Russia and China did not use a veto. They abstained, leaving Iran without the protective wall that it had been used to in the past. That does not mean Moscow and Beijing have switched sides, but it does mean that at this moment, neither of them was prepared to pay the full price of fully defending Tehran. At the same time, inside Iran itself, the signs of chaos continue. Mujtaba Khamenei still has not been seen in public. In the various reports, he is described as wounded, in hiding, with very limited communications. Even if this is not possible right now to determine the severity of his condition, the fact that the new supreme leader is not seen and is not projecting public authority while the besieged roadblocks are being bombed in the heart of Tehran is part of the whole story of what's happening. The street understands this. The regime supporters understand this. And the regime's enemies understand this as well. But day 13 of the war did not end only in Tehran or Washington. It also closed with an internal Lebanese question. In the Israeli defense establishment, a war of narratives broke out last night over the question of who thwarted or failed to prevent a preemptive strike before Hezbollah's major attack. There are claims of prior information, of a desire to protect an intelligence source, or insufficient early warning to the public, and of a sharp argument between different elements in the military. The IDF spokesperson rejected the claims and said that the information was used for strikes throughout the day in order to thwart the threat as much as possible. But the very fact that this argument is taking place now shows that the heavy night in the north was not quietly observed. It will continue to hunt both the operational echelon and the intelligence echelon of Hezbollah. And therefore, if we sum up day 13 of the war, we see three clear axes moving together. The first is the operational axis. Israel is striking deeper, more precisely, and also further inward, all the way to the besieged roadblocks in Tehran. The second is the maritime American axis. The United States is moving to pressure from the sea, to Hormuz, to oil, and to the aerial freedom above the skies of Iran. And the third is the political axis. Iran is threatening, trying to set conditions, but at the same time losing another layer of international backing and sinking deeper into the regime's collapse. This campaign has long since ceased to be only a question of how many missiles were launched and how many were intercepted, but rather of who is still capable of commanding, coordinating, deterring, and controlling the streets, the sea, and the skies. And if this night in Tehran really marks a new phase in striking the regime's suppression mechanisms, then the next question will no longer be only how long the lines of fire will still hold, but what will break first: the launch array, freedom of navigation, or the regime's own sense of security inside its capital. Let me know what you think in the comments. And on that question, only God can answer. And maybe Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Donald Trump have some idea as well. But keep spreading the truth, follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to click that subscribe button so that you receive daily boots on the ground updates of what's happening here. And keep looking for us if you want to see this war through our eyes. Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani on social media platforms. And to sum everything up, this is a spiritual war. There's no logical explanation why the Ayatollah regime in Iran will launch so much attacks against Israel or against the United States of America. It will be a lot wiser for them financially, and most of the leaders will still be alive if they would just make peace with Israel, with the United States, have some cooperation. That would be good for everybody. But this is a spiritual war. And we understand that Israel, being here in modern days, is living proof that God is faithful to his promises from the times of the Bible. And that means that he will be faithful to his promises to each and every one of you. And the enemy cannot have that, because if Israel exists, that means that his time is coming up very soon. And that's why he's sending all these attacks, all these nations against the Jewish state. So if you want to pray for the situation, pray for wisdom to our leaders, pray for all the children of Israel, my children, my team's children, everybody who's affected by this war. Pray for the servicemen, women, pilots, sailors, boots on the ground, special forces, intelligence, command, everybody who's involved in fighting this evil regime. And pray for the people of Iran. They need it. They need it very much. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. We'll see you again later on today.